What's up guys, welcome to Vintage Genetics, where it is all about classic bodybuilding. Today is a chest day, of course one of the favorite days for pretty much every single bodybuilder. So today we're going to start with the chest press. We're actually going to use resistant bands as well to go even heavier than just the plates to really get a good warm-up for the rest of the workout and a very good chest activation, good mind-muscle connection. So let's start with the first set, the warm-up.
Alright, so the first exercise will be the regular chest press. At first glance it looks like the old school chest press, just a regular one, but only the very first set of this exercise will be just the regular chest press as you're used to. Simple weights. Look at how I'm seated. I'm seated quite high so that my the pressing movement isn't going straight from my shoulder, but it's actually going downwards a little bit, allowing me to tuck in my shoulders a little bit more without having to use the front delts, because I really want to use the chest. So I really can focus now on the contraction of the chest without using the front delts too much. You want to eliminate the front delts as much as possible from any chest movement, because what you want to train is the chest. But as I said in the beginning, this used to look like a regular chest press, but now with the second warm-up set, I already added something different, something unusual, which is resistance bands. So I put two resistant bands on each handle, so 2 in total, and those actually add resistance, dynamic resistance to the movement. So that means that the more I press forward, the more the bands are stretched and the more tension is being created. Now, what is the actual advantage of this is that when you press, you can actually feel the increase of tension in the muscle, in the chest. So for people who have trouble contracting their chest with their minds, who have trouble like individually contracting the pectoral muscles, this is a great way to practice that contraction, because you literally are forced, because especially at the very end when the elastic bands, the resistant bands, are at their strongest, are at their most tight form, then the tension is at the highest and the contraction will be as well. So you basically don't have a choice but to squeeze the chest very hard. And to me, that is what creates a full, round and quality chest with all the striations you could wish for. If you don't utilize the contraction at the very end, and I do know of some bodybuilders who actually recommend using shorter range of motion to ensure that you're not using too much tricep or front delts. While that is great advice for some people, for others like me who have developed a chest with good quality and fullness, especially when conditioned, you really should use a full range of motion, because you can definitely tell the difference, in my opinion, between a bodybuilder who has been training with a 3/4 of a half range of motion and a bodybuilder who trains with full range of motion. It's simply a difference in quality of the muscle fiber, because you simply use different and more of the muscle fibers of the muscle when you use a full range of motion compared to only a shoulder range of motion. So here it already is becoming quite difficult. Normally also I'm quite strong on the chest press, so I have to load it up to the max, and even when it's loaded up with all the plates until the max, it's still relatively easy to do around 15 reps. So because I want to go to failure, complete failure, even before hitting 10 reps to really overload the chest muscle, I like to use these resistant bands as well. As you can see, I added one more band at every side to really go to absolute failure at the very end, which I just did at around 8 or 9 reps. I don't recommend going so heavy that you can only do 3 or 4 reps, because then you will be forced to use different muscles to assist you in the workout, in the exercise. So if you really want to utilize the chest, go with the weight. Even at the very last set, you can minimally do 6 reps with, and then next time you try to beat those 6 reps with a slightly heavier weight, which is exactly what progressive overload is all about. And then the next exercise, guys, the decline bench press. The decline bench press is actually a great exercise not only for the lower pecs but also the upper pecs. Now usually I like to do this in a regular bench press without a Smith machine, but right now we only have a regular bench press. And it's not possible to do a decline bench press without being spotted properly. So to minimize the risk, of course, I try to do it in a safe way in the Smith machine. The other benefit of doing the decline bench press is that you can actually take out the front delts out of the movement, because before reaching that range of motion at the very bottom, you are already touching your chest. So you take the shoulders, where most of the shoulder stress occurs at the very bottom, you take that out of the equation for the most part. So most people who have shoulder problems when doing this exercise instead of the regular bench press should actually be able to go quite heavy without feeling too much pain in the shoulders. But right after this set, I'm going to show you exactly what I do on occasion when I feel it in my shoulders to alleviate the pain and fix any shoulder injuries or shoulder impingements, stuff like that. So most of you are probably familiar with my shoulder stretch on the floor. If you're not, look it up on my channel. It's how to fix your shoulder or shoulder fix. Vintage Genetics, you will find it then. It has quite a lot of views because it helped quite a lot of people get a lot of DM messages on Instagram for that, which I appreciate a lot, of course. But this is an even more advanced version because it's the same movement for your shoulder, but I'm using a resistant band here. And you can even go further compared to the floor stretch. So the more you walk forward, the bigger and more difficult and more intense the stretch on your shoulder will be. You should need some shoulder mobility before attempting this, because if you attempt this from the get-go with without trying, without warming up beforehand, then you might actually run into problems with the shoulders, because you're simply putting certain tendons and ligaments under stress they're not used to. So you really have to be properly warmed up in that area before attempting the stretch. But it really alleviates a lot of shoulder tension when doing the chest.
Right, next up, the third exercise is going to be the chest dumbbell press. Just a flat one, really targets the entire chest. We did the chest press, the machine first, to get a good contraction and a good stretch. Then the decline bench press, it actually also targets the upper chest, but now the regular dumbbell press to target the chest from a different angle, which is one of the best exercises there is. So let's get to it.
Alrighty, next up is the regular dumbbell press. As I mentioned, it simply is yet another exercise to put the chest under a different strain, a different kind of stress, a different angle, which is what bodybuilding is all about. If getting a pump in a muscle and going to failure of that muscle would be enough, you can simply stick to a bench press, do 5 or 6 sets, go to failure in the last 2 and be done with it. But if you want a complete muscle with complete development and a complete strength in every single angle to get that dry, detailed and full look in the muscles, then you simply have to hit it from a lot of different angles, and there simply are certain exercises that are the most effective and efficient for certain muscles. And in my opinion, for the chest it is the bench press, but especially the dumbbell press. Again, if you have any type of shoulder problems, don't do the regular bench press for a while, but stick to a dumbbell press, or as I just did, a decline bench press, for example, because that will put so much less stress on the shoulders. And I mentioned stretch because what I'm doing right here is I'm using the shoulder, the rear delts and the lats to really stretch the shoulder joint once again, to relieve the tension there and to get more blood flow into that area. So when I'm doing a dumbbell press here, normally I would be able to do a lot more weight, but right now I'm already struggling doing like 70% of what I usually am able to do. The reasoning for this is obviously because I already did 2 quite heavy exercises for the chest. If you would still be able to do a lot of weight right now, that means you simply didn't work hard enough at the first exercises. Some people do, advise not to do too much volume, and that is because you're then less focused on going all out at the beginning of the workout, because you know that you still have a lot of exercises left. But if you have a mentality of a true bodybuilder, that won't happen.
Right, next up is the flies, the cable flies actually. And cable flies are great to isolate the chest instead of all the presses, taking with the triceps. Now we're doing it without the triceps, purely the chest. So let's do it right now.
Alright, now that we did 3 pressing exercises, it is time to isolate the chest and really finish it off. What I'm doing here is really focusing on letting the chest do the work. So really focus on what movement does the chest want me to make. Don't just move your arms in the direction that you think your chest will contract the best way. Let your chest do the work, and that is much easier when you do the chest flies near the end of the workout, because you're much more aware of your chest muscles. They are filled with blood. There's a big pump in the chest, so you literally feel where the chest muscles are, and you feel exactly when it's being contracted and stretched in the right way. And again, in between every set, I like to do this dead hang a little bit and then use the lats a little bit to stretch the shoulders out even more, and then go right back to another set of the exercise that I'm doing. As you can also see, I'm not using a lot of weight because I'm really doing my very best to isolate the chest and not really use the front delts. However, if you look at my muscles, you can see that I am using the front delts just a little bit, but they're not fully contracted because I'm fully contracting the chest. And if you would force a contraction, you would literally push your arms forward even more and then contract the front delts to the max without getting any more benefit out of the exercise. And that is not what you want to do, but that is what would happen if you chose a heavier weight. The chest is pretty much fried right now, so I'm using the minimum amount of weight to get the maximum amount of benefit from this exercise, using a little more reps than usual. Usually I'd stay around 10 to 12 reps, but doing it at this stage, for my feeling right now, what I'm feeling is that I would use more front delts compared to the chest. And what I want to do here is really finish off the chest purely by using the chest without using any other muscles, which is what your goal should be as a bodybuilder doing any exercise for any muscle group. And still, even as I am really approaching failure here, I'm really focusing on letting the chest do the work instead of different muscles to make sure it's most effective.
Right, the final chest exercise will be the dumbbell pullover. One of my favorite chest exercises you can do. It's also an isolation, but then for the chest. However, keep in mind the mind-muscle connection is very important here, so really get your mind into the muscle to make this exercise work. So let's do it.
Alright guys, the good old school dumbbell pullover we're doing right here. I just did an isolation movement, the most known isolation movement for the chest, the cable flies. But now it's time for a different isolation movement, the dumbbell pullover. Most people say and feel it mostly in their lats. They say that this exercise is mostly for the lat muscles and the serratus muscles. But if you have a great mind-muscle connection and ability to contract the chest and be conscious of how to feel the chest in certain movements, you can definitely use this exercise for the chest. The thing is, of course, if you start the workout with a pullover exercise, it will be the back that you feel the most. But if you end the workout, the chest workout, with a dumbbell pullover, that means your chest is already fatigued, so the weakest link in this chain of muscles will be the chest, so that will be the muscle that will fill first. So you really try to isolate using the chest. You cannot really prevent the lats from helping you. As you see, the lats are doing a little bit. You can literally see the muscle changing shape, but that's mostly the stretch because that happens automatically. But during the contraction part, you really push your elbows, you squeeze them together. Actually, you feel, you're conscious of them squeezing together, and that squeezes your chest, it contracts your chest, and that is what causes that contraction and that mind-muscle connection inside of the chest, the usage of the chest. And that's what you want during a dumbbell pullover. I'm not going extremely heavy here. Sometimes I'd go to 50 kilograms, but that would minimize the amount of, recruitment of muscle fibers in the chest and would maximize them in the lats, because that's right now the stronger muscle group, and it's very difficult to isolate the chest when you're going too heavy after already having done a lot of chest work. So I'm doing 3 sets here of 15 reps, going all the way down until I feel a very good stretch in the chest, and then go all the way up until I feel a maximum contraction, and then that exercise is done.
Right, the next exercise will be the tricep one. It's the only exercise we're going to do for the triceps, but it's the superset, so 2 exercises in one, starting out with the rope push down and then the rope overhead extension to really target the full extent of the triceps, all 3 heads in one single exercise superset. So let's do it.
Alright, the next one. After having done all the chest work, it's time to finish off the triceps. And I actually like to do that with a superset. So you only have to do these 2 exercises back to back, and then you're done with the triceps, because we already did a lot of chest work involving the triceps, especially the first 3 exercises. You cannot help but use the triceps, especially the medial head. So right now I'm using the rope push down first to accentuate the small head, and then the overhead rope extension to accentuate the long head of the triceps. And really, I love doing this superset. I have the luxury here of course, having 2 separate cables to use this exercise, but what you can also do is use the same rope and just turn around and then do the overhead rope extension, just up the weight a little bit, so that it's challenging, because this rope extension downward is more difficult than the overhead rope extension, because you're simply able to use a little more power from that different angle of the triceps to push the weight. So what you really do first is you get a good pump in the triceps, an even better pump from the rope push down, and then you immediately stretch it out during the rope overhead rope extension, because targeting the long head requires you to stretch out the triceps, and it also requires you to keep an angle of your upper arms upwards a little bit more compared to straight parallel to the floor. That will create a much better stretch, which is good for the long head. And here you can see me stretching out the triceps. I usually like to do this when I feel a very good pump in the triceps. It's difficult to keep pushing as much weight with full range of motion, because you're literally, your muscle fibers are stuck and intertwined, and you have to stretch them out in between sets to free up all that blood, free up all those toxins, to free up all the lactic acid, so you're actually able to give it your all during the actual exercise. If you look closely, I'm going higher than 90 degrees, making sure that I fully stretch the tricep, going upwards and then going downwards as much as possible, fully contracting the triceps. And I have to be honest, since this is the last set, the last few reps of this one, I don't go outwards anymore. I stay inwards with my hands, and that allows me to go past failure on these rope pushdowns and really get the max out of those triceps. And you will notice that when you go to failure on the rope pushdown, and it's much more difficult to complete this overhead rope extension because the triceps are pretty much shot at this point. So again, what I'm doing here is I'm not going outwards with the wrists, I'm staying inwards, which makes it easier to complete a full range of motion, but you are targeting the triceps just a little differently.
That's it. That was quite a nice chest and tricep workout. As you saw, we did a lot more chest exercises than triceps, because when you do chest, you already target the triceps partly. And on top of that, I have a separate tricep day, so that's why we only ended up with 1 superset exercise for the triceps, so I don't overtrain a muscle that is a weak point, because you have to target that with maximum force and maximum recovery. If you train it too often, it won't recover enough for growth. Anyway guys, that was the workout, and again we're coming out with new items on the store, just like this tank top right here, a dropped armhole tank top, new colors, new designs, all available on Vintage Genetics superset.com. And I want to thank you guys for all the incredible support. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to stay golden.